Good afternoon. House Democrats are excited to get to work, and we're ready to do our part to try to reverse recent trends in this building and actually get things done to help the people of Missouri. 20 years ago, it was common for the Missouri legislature to pass around 200 policy bills a year. Even a decade ago, you could still expect well over 100 policy bills a year to make it to the governor's desk. But in the last 5 sessions, we haven't even cracked the 50 bill mark, with last year setting a record for legislative futility with just 28 policy bills passed. Yet in this era of low legislative output, the majority party often has prioritized unnecessary measures that serve only to demonize certain vulnerable groups for political gain while doing nothing to improve our state. House Democrats believe legislation should be prioritized based on some simple standards. Does a bill improve economic opportunities for Missourians, especially middle and lower income residents? Does it improve Missourians' quality of life? Does it protect their safety and security while respecting constitutional rights? Does it strengthen public education and ensure all children are given the foundation they need to succeed? Does it improve access to affordable health care? And does it enhance the ability of Missourians to make their own choices about their own lives without unwarranted government interference? If a bill doesn't check at least one of these boxes, then it probably isn't something that Missourians want us focusing our time on in the coming months. As the minority party, we don't set the agenda, but it is our job to hold the majority accountable if it fails to make improving the lives of Missourians a top priority. I'll take questions.
So we heard just from the House Speaker moments ago about Amendment 3, and he said that there's really no discussion of repealing it, but instead wants to make definitions such as fetal viability. Would you guys be open to those discussions of putting out that definition, or do you think that that should be off the table altogether?
I believe that Missouri voters spoke in November, and I believe that it is incumbent upon us as the folks who are sent down here and entrusted to represent them in the legislature to to uphold the will of the voters. It was clear in the language what they were voting on, and I think it is insulting to voters to come down here and for the majority party to say, no, we know better than you, we're going to add to this. I just don't believe there's any room for conversation, and frankly, I'm not certain that the majority party is going to be able to get their ducks in a row and be on the same page about it.
Does today's challenge to Patterson's speakership is that illustrative of the fact that Republican leaders are going to be under pressure to do something about Amendment 3?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that it's important to remember that while Speaker Patterson had a very successful election today and he had bipartisan support, he built a very conservative coalition to get where he is today. He had to. He had to appease the folks on the far right of his caucus to earn their trust. So he will be expected, I think, to move further to the right than we've seen him before, and I'll be interested to see how that takes shape this session.
Ma'am, Speaker Patterson said this was about someone with a monumental ego trying to upset the House. Democrats could have voted present. You could have stayed and made it a three-way race and forced Republicans to show just how many. Why was it important to you to withdraw when you did? Why did you say the things you did?
I believe that, first of all, I believe everything I said in my speech, which is that we do better work here for the people of Missouri if we can stand together and we can learn from one another. And it has been my experience in this building that that is where change actually happens. And I do think that at this time, showing the people of Missouri that you elected us, you sent us down here, you entrusted us to do this work, we are going to do the best we can for our constituents and for every single Missouri family. That means putting our differences aside and showing some unity and some mutual respect between the new leadership and giving this new leadership team and this new General Assembly an opportunity to do the right thing.
Looking at your priorities that you listed here, they're almost identical to what Representative Patterson said. Childcare, mental health resources, and medical services. What do you think that that means, that here we have Democrats and Republicans coming up with some of the same ideas?
I like to think that it means that legislators are listening to our constituents, that they're listening to the people of Missouri, that we heard what they said in November loud and clear, and what they're looking for is to make their lives a little bit easier, to get government out of their lives, to make life in Missouri a little bit less expensive, to keep our families safe, and to give educational opportunities to folks. Now, if the majority party and the minority party are kind of coming together and having similar objectives, I love that, but I also would say that it's been my experience that we often agree on the problem and vehemently disagree on the solution. So while we agree that there are certain challenges that our state faces, I do think that the challenge will be actually solving those problems in a bipartisan manner.
An example that might be issues of public safety. That's something that incoming Governor Mike Kehoe says is his #1 priority, is a big public safety bill, including who should control the St. Louis Police Department. I'm not asking you about that part, but I am asking kind of what is your envisioning of what a public safety bill should look like, and where do you think you might see some similarities with what Republicans want on that?
I think a comprehensive public safety bill would serve every Missourian. It wouldn't target folks. It would make sure that we are taking into consideration every single different community in the state and what that looks like and how they need to interact with public safety. I think that there is often a very homogenous sort of approach to public safety, especially with the supermajority in place here. I think it's really important to listen to the lived experiences of all of the folks in the legislature, first of all, but also all of our constituents, and make sure that the public safety solutions that we put forward are actually serving everyone.
There was a wave of support for criminal justice reforms in the past. Now it seems maybe trending more toward the tough on crime approach again. How do you see the pattern in popularity, especially among Republicans here in Missouri, in terms of how to handle crime in the state?
Well, I think that if you talk to most of the folks in my caucus, you'll hear us talk more about investing in communities in order to prevent crime. There are so many statistics that tell us that investing in communities and making sure that they have the resources that they need and the opportunities that they need to thrive, that is what prevents crime. Now, the other approach is, from the majority party, is, like you said, a tough on crime approach, right? That looks more like increasing the penalties for certain crimes. I'm not certain that you're going to hear too many folks on my side of the aisle jump up for joy for those ideas. I think that what we're likely to continue to do is disagree on the things that will make us safer.
One of the things that Senator O'Loughlin mentioned, both to me in November and in her speech, was that Missouri's child welfare system has failed and needs a reboot. How does the Democrats see a reboot of Children's Division? Does it include, like, different way of managing it? Is it more money? Is it both? A lot of Republicans I've talked to have said management and more money for employees, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
I think that appropriating more money to the Children's Division is one of the biggest ways that we can help the challenges that we're seeing. So much of the root causes of what we're seeing are we're not able to pay these folks who are doing this incredibly difficult work what they're worth. We're not able to hire enough people to take the enormous workloads off of these social workers. And so, yes, I think it has to be a multifaceted approach. I'll be interested to see some of the ideas that come out of both caucuses this year. I know that there are a lot of ideas floating around, but I do think we have to approach it in multiple ways. Throwing money at something doesn't always solve a problem, right? And so we need to make sure that we're looking at it from all angles. And but I do think that it starts with appropriating more money.
What kinds of priorities are we going to see on the western side of the state with a speaker from Jackson and a minority leader from Platte County?
Well, I certainly think that you're going to be hearing a little bit more about the World Cup in 2026. We're pretty excited about that. I also think that obviously we're in a really unique situation with the Chiefs and the Royals, determining what kind of public support goes into keeping them here in Missouri. I think that that's going to be a topic of conversation you'll hear a little bit more about. I'm disappointed that Governor Parson didn't follow through on his promise to provide a plan by the end of the year, which he said he would do. But I do think that it's incumbent upon us as a legislature to work hand in hand with city officials and county officials to put up the best solution that makes sure that we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
The governor had said something about looking like outside of Kansas City and Jackson County, like surrounding counties for some of this. And would you be open to that in order to keep the Chiefs and the Royals in Missouri?
I'm open to all sorts of things, and there were certainly big conversations about the Royals moving to Clay County not too long ago. So that's been in the conversation for a while, and really what I would like to see is a solution that keeps the Chiefs and the Royals in Missouri. If they have to spread out their geographic footprint a little bit in Missouri, I'm fine with that, but I do not want to see them go into Kansas.
An almost annual occurrence is a press conference in which Democrats gather to tell us that the gavel has come down on women standing at the microphone waiting to speak on an issue that has a disproportionate impact on women, or minority members left standing at the microphone when the gavel comes down with an issue that has a disproportionate effect on the communities where they live. Do you have any assurances from the Republican leadership that there will be, the Democrats will be able to give their full expression of their views on it?
Not only do I not have assurances, there are proposed rule changes that would allow folks to speak even less on third read of a bill. And that's disappointing. As a super minority, I can tell you in the last 4 years that I've been here that there have been so many opportunities to speak and to really say our piece on something, and we've been shut down. And we don't set the agenda. We don't get to decide what piece of legislation moves through this building. So the least the majority party could do is allow us to give an opinion, to share what our constituents think about the issues, and to make sure that everyone in Missouri has their voice heard on the issue.
Did you get any assurances from the Republican leadership? Did you tell them you were going to do what you did during the speaker fight today? And did they give you any assurances about how they would handle or treat the Democrats on the floor?
No, not explicitly. When I shared with Speaker Patterson that I would be saying what I said and withdrawing my nomination, I did so because he and I have already developed mutual respect and an understanding. We work very well together. And while I haven't been given explicit assurances, what I will say is I do trust him to be fair and to listen to me and to my caucus members when we do have an issue. And I hope that what I've seen from him in the past continues in his speakership.
Representative, you mentioned following the will of the voters after the November election. Even now, abortion clinics, because the licensure remains in place, cannot perform that procedure in the state of Missouri. Has there been any discussion amongst Democrat House leaders about what can be done legislatively once these licensures are granted, but also to protect certain clinics that Republicans have placed targeted regulations on previously?
That's a great question, and I know that there have been conversations about that, but I haven't seen any hard and fast policy proposals yet, so I don't really have much on that.
State budget projections would lower, less money to work with and all that. What do you see as potential issues, especially when today Speaker Patterson was talking about tax cuts? Is there a sweet spot between Republicans and Democrats, especially when you're having less money, but also they want tax cuts?
I wouldn't say there's a sweet spot. I would say that our caucus agrees that life is too expensive for most Missouri families. I think that where we disagree with the Republicans is how we solve that problem and how we make life a little bit more affordable for folks. The proposal to bring the income tax down to 0 is a proposal that will mostly benefit the folks who make the highest income in our state. It's important to remember that the proposals coming out of our caucus include things like ending sales tax on groceries, the things that hit families every single day. That's what's important to us, not giving tax cuts to the folks who need it the least.
So like, what about the property tax proposal from Senator Representative Coleman, I believe, in your neck of the woods? Is that something that you would support more than the actual tax cuts?
The property tax cuts are always a challenge because as soon as we start talking about cutting property taxes, I go back to my district and my school district and my, all the folks who benefit from that, our first responders, all of it. They say, please don't do that. That revenue is so crucial to what we do. And I'm proud to represent the Park Hill School District. It is so incredible. And the idea that I would go back to them and say, I'm so sorry, you're already struggling with so many things, but you're gonna have even less to work with. That's a really hard conversation to have. So if we can find a solution that allows for some relief for folks, but also makes sure that we're preserving all of the public interest that goes into tax revenue and everything it's spent on, I think that that's where we need to be. I would also mention that property tax cuts also mostly benefit folks who own a lot of property.
Going back to Chiefs and Royals again, back in 2015, there was a St. Louis-based stadium proposal by the Democratic governor, and members of both parties pushed back against it because they were like, why should the state pay for stadiums? With a lot of nuance here, like the state paid for the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis, but what is going to be your response to St. Louisans who are like, I don't want to spend a dime on the Chiefs and Royals if Kansas City people aren't willing to pay for the new Rams stadium?
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the overall economic impact that these professional teams have on our state as a whole. Yes, of course, it affects the Kansas City region, but those revenues are huge. Not only that, but the Chiefs' recent success has been a huge PR boon for our state. Folks are talking about Missouri, they're talking about Kansas City, and you can't put a price tag on that. So I would say that what I would hope is that folks in St. Louis, or just on the other side of the state, or just not in Kansas City, they'd be willing to listen to these points, but also just the idea that there's so much fandom and culture and pride that goes into having these professional sports teams local. And it would be really devastating to our state and our standing as a state if we no longer had an NFL team or an MLB team.
Would the priority be keeping Missouri's only NFL team versus losing one of their 2 MLB teams?
I'm not necessarily going to say what should be the priority, because frankly, what I'd like to see is more of a plan from every single level. I think that there needs to be a plan from the state, I think there needs to be a plan from the city, and I think there needs to be a plan from whatever county wants the sports teams to reside there. It has to be collaborative, otherwise it just won't work.
Immigration is a big topic during the last election cycle, of course, on top of mind right now with the new administration coming in. One of the provisions that we've reported on previously is the fact that nursing students and nursing school graduates in Missouri who are under the DACA program cannot get licensed in Missouri. Is there any movement from your caucus on that matter, and how do you hope to see that through, if so?
It's a great question. I'm actually not certain if we've filed that bill yet, but I am certain that we will if we haven't yet.
I have one public safety question real quick. So voters in California, one of the most liberal states, in November supported increasing sentencing on some petty crimes and things like that. And also voters in Los Angeles, a left-leaning city, voted in a independent, tough on crime prosecutor. And I'm just wondering if you're worried at all about the political headwinds of criminal justice reform versus tougher sentencing, even from liberals, is coming, and if sort of seeing those results has altered you as a caucus and in general your view on crime prevention.
I don't know that what we've seen in these blue states and these blue cities is necessarily affecting kind of or shaping the policy that we're proposing. We're watching it, of course. It'll be interesting to see what the successes and failures look like. But I think that I think public safety is constantly a balance, and it's really important to make sure that we do pay attention to both a carrot and a stick approach. We have to. That's part of the system. But finding a balance and making sure that the majority party doesn't go too far with it is going to be our biggest priority, holding the line where we need to.